Welcome to Manteo High School for our December business meeting of the Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, December 8th, and it's about 5:05 p.m. Sorry for the delay in getting started. Following Dare County Schools Policy 2303, which is organization of the board, the superintendent presides over the opening of this meeting until the board elects a new chairperson. So I'm not used to having this gavel in my hands, and we'll gladly give it to one of you once we have a new chair elected. Do want to congratulate Ms. Valence, Mr. Twitty for being reelected to the board, and certainly want to congratulate our new board members, Carl Woody and Susan Bothwell. Congratulations. We're looking forward to working with you. I want to thank everyone who's listening tonight in the community. We have several guests who are with us, or family members of our board members are going to be sworn in tonight, several directors, and we appreciate everyone joining us. I also want to thank Mr. Luciano and Ms. Pritchard for being gracious hosts. Thank you. Like you had a choice. Item 2 on our agenda is a moment of silence, so please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Twitty to do the welcome and the pledge. Mr. Twitty.
Thank you, Dr. Farley. Welcome tonight. I'd like to thank, first of all, our parents, our administrators, our teachers, and our students for what incredible job they have been doing over the last few weeks under the pandemic that we've been dealing with. It shows that we are strong, we're going to move forward, and we're going to be the best that we've ever been. And it will show at the end of this year. I assure you with that. So at this time, I'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we will have the oath of office for our elected board members. We're thankful to have the Honorable Dean M. Tolson, the clerk of Dare County Superior Court, with us this evening. He will be administering the oath of office this evening. I will call the re-elected and newly elected board members individually to come to the front of the room for the oath of office. I'll also introduce your special guests or family members who are here, and we welcome them to join us up front for the oath of office. Your Honor, will you please proceed to the front at this time? You've already done that. Well done, Dean. Thank you. Just follow my script. Ms. Marilyn Valence, you have been duly elected as a representative from District 4 to the Dare County Board of Education. We welcome you and your husband, Todd Valence, who will assist in the ceremony by holding the Bible. Would you please join Mr. Tolson for the oath of office?
Ms. Valence, if you'll place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right, and please repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Mary Valence,
Do solemnly swear that I'll support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Dare County Board of Education. So help me God. Congratulations.
Ms. Susan Bothwell, you've been duly elected as a representative from District 2 to the Dare County Board of Education. We welcome you, Commissioner Rob Ross, who is with us this evening, who will assist in the ceremony by holding the Bible. Would you please join Mr. Tolson for the oath of office?
Bible for us. You'll place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I'll support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I'll faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Dare County Board of Education. So help me God. Congratulations. Yep. Just trying to make you look better. Can I have my Bible back, please? Rob. Bible.
He was taking it to his pod. Mr. David Twitty, you've been duly elected as representative from District 5 to the Dare County Board of Education. We welcome you and your wife Shannon Twitty, who will assist you in the ceremony by holding the Bible. Would you please join Mr. Tolson for the oath of office?
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right, and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I'll support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I'll faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Dare County Board of Education. So help me God. Congratulations. Shannon. I should have been a preacher.
And while Ms. Twitty's here, Ms. Twitty is retiring this month. She's been an outstanding employee at Central Office for several years. Let's give her a big hand. Mr. Carl Woody, you've been duly elected as representative from District 1 to the Dare County Board of Education. We welcome you and your wife Angela Woody, Mother Sue Woody, and Father Carl Woody Sr., who will assist you in the ceremony by holding the Bible. Will you please join Mr. Tolson for the oath of office?
You have your own Bible? Yep. You place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Other. And please repeat after me. I state your full name. I, Carl Woody II. Do solemnly swear. That I'll support and maintain. The Constitution and laws. Of the United States. And the Constitution and laws. Of North Carolina. Not inconsistent therewith, and that I'll faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a member of the Dare County Board of Education. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Tolson. We appreciate it greatly. Item 5 on our agenda is the reorganization of the board. Board Policy 2303, entitled Organizational Meeting, states the Board of Education will have an organizational meeting at its first meeting after December 1. At the organizational meeting, board members will elect officers for a period of 1 year or until a successor is elected and qualified. I now declare the floor open for nominations for the position of Chairman of the Dare County Board of Education.
Frank Hester, I'd like to nominate Mary Elon Balance in the position of Chair.
Second.
Mr. Hester has nominated Ms. Balance. Mr. Tauber has seconded. Are there any more nominations? Hearing none, I declare the nominations are closed, and we'll have a roll call since we're on audio. And as a reminder, as we move through the meeting tonight, to please identify yourself when you're speaking. Would all please indicate an aye or a yes, or a nay or no as I do the roll call of the board. Ms. Lawler,
Yes.
Ms. Balance,
Yes.
Mr. Woody,
Yes.
Mr. Tauber,
Yes.
Mr. Hester,
Yes.
Mr. Twitty,
Yes.
Ms. Bothwell.
Yes.
Ms. Balance, you've been elected the chairman of the Dare County Board of Education. Congratulations. I will now gladly relinquish the gavel to you so that you can run the vice chair nominations.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, I just want to take just a minute to share a few thoughts about our previous chairwoman. I wasn't really at our last meeting able to speak, but Bee Bass Knight served this county as a teacher, a member of the Board of Education, and an active and involved member of the Dare County community. I personally watched Bee spend countless hours and put forth an enormous amount of effort and energy into making sure that our schools are the very best, and she did it with grace and dignity. I am proud to have had the opportunity to not only serve beside her, but to have been able to learn so much from her. I know I have big shoes to fill, and I am grateful and humbled to have the support of this board to continue in the capacity of board chairman. And with that, I will take nominations for vice chair.
Madam Chair, Joe Tauber, I nominate Margaret Lawler for Vice Chair.
We have a nomination of Margaret Lawler. Is there any other nominations?
I second.
Need a second.
I second.
Don't we close the nominations first? Or does that matter?
I would just reemphasize if there's
So-
a second.
So there's no more nominations on the
Correct.
floor. There is a second from Mr. Twitty. So we will close the floor to nominations and with a roll call vote. Margaret? Yes. Mary Ellen, yes. Carl?
Woody, yes.
Joe Tauber, yes.
Frank Hester, yes.
David Twitty, yes.
Susan Bothwell, yes.
And so congratulations, Margaret. Thank you. Okay, so as my first meeting, please bear with me. We need approval of the agenda you have before you.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the agenda.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Tauber,
Second.
second by Mr. Hester. And again, we do a roll call vote.
Margaret Lawler, yes.
Mary Ellen Balance, yes.
Carl Woody, yes.
Joe Tauber, yes.
Frank Hester, yes.
David Twitty, yes.
Susan Bothwell, yes.
Okay, we have an agenda ahead of us, and now we will move to announcements. Dr. Farley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few brief announcements. First, we're very pleased to be invited to attend the COA groundbreaking ceremony this Thursday. The start of a dream that's going to come true here in Dare County, a new state-of-the-art facility, and we're looking forward to that on Thursday at 10 a.m. We appreciate the invite by the county commissioners and Dr. Bagwell from COA. Next, on our school calendar, we do have an early release day on December 18th. Traditionally, on early release days, each school, based upon their feeder pattern and transportation needs, releases typically somewhere between 11:15 and 12 o'clock, depending upon the school. However, since we do have students who've been attending school in our content-related standard classrooms, they've been going to school to 1:30, and the early release on the 18th will be 1:30. Next, want to recognize some administrators who go on above and beyond the call of duty. Many of our administrators are learning leaders, we like to call, who continue to hone their craft and seek out professional development opportunities. And we've got several who have taken the extra step, despite all the responsibilities on a daily basis, to get involved in some other adventures and ventures. N.C. Papa is the North Carolina Principal and Assistant Principal Association, and we currently have Diane Childress for First Light Middle School, Holly King, who's an instructional facilitator, Robert Tripp, our new assistant principal, who are in the program, and I've recently nominated Rachel Benton and Beth Rooks from Cape Hatteras Secondary, and I'm sure they'll be accepted. So we're very proud of the work that those folks are doing. We also have a set of employees who are involved in something called an I-4. It's an innovation grant opportunity where we've been deploying a new coaching model in Dare County Schools for about the last year and a half, 2 years, to try to assist teachers in providing them with more coaching and kind of informal ways to improve their craft as opposed to the evaluative process. And there's a program called I-4, and they are focusing on effective ways to coach. So this is a step beyond our see it, name it, do it model here in Dare County Schools. Those administrators are Diane Childress also, so she's doing double duty. Holly King also is involved in that program. Curtis Price, Elizabeth Keenan, April Oden, and Rachel Benton. So many thanks to our administrators, and we actually have some, Ms. Parker, who's working on her doctorate, and someone I'm forgetting. You the only one, Joe? God bless you. So, proud of the work our admins are doing. And then the last announcement, kind of echoing Mr. Twitty's opening comments. It's obviously been a stressful year and continues to be on a daily basis. But as we get close to the holidays, wish everyone a very safe holiday season. And our administrators who've been working 24/7 for about the last 7 months and deserve a much-needed break, as do our teachers and our parents who've been functioning as teachers themselves for several months. So this is my last chance to wish everyone happy holidays. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Farley. And I will echo in that too, the amount of work and effort that has gone into, from our teachers to our secretaries to our custodians, everybody has just gone above and beyond, and we're so grateful to have such a phenomenal staff in Dare County. Next, we have recognitions. Dr. Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and congratulations on your election as chairman. Tonight, we are excited to recognize several staff members and students from Manteo High School, and I'm going to ask Principal John Luciano to come forward and share those with you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Congratulations, Ms. Balance and Ms. Lawler. Okay, so our first recognition is to our athletic director, Alfie Wheeler, who is Region 1 recipient of the Charles Adams Distinguished Service Award. The award is in honor of the longtime North Carolina High School Athletic Association executive director who retired from that post in January of 2010. The award is presented annually to one individual in each region during the association's annual regular meeting. One award is given per region and goes to an individual with at least 10 years of experience in education and athletics and who is still active in the field and has regularly gone above and beyond the call of duty at both the local and state levels. So it's a real honor to have had received this from Mr. Wheeler from Manteo High School. My second recognition is our 2020-2021 Manteo High School Teacher of the Year, as voted by the staff, and that is Melissa Mann. Miss Mann is a teacher in the Exceptional Children's Department and a head track coach. However, last year, when the need arose, Miss Mann took over an unforeseen vacancy we had in the math department. The entire faculty was aware of the sacrifice she made to quickly familiarize herself with her new role. She set an example of putting the needs of the school and the students before her own. Congratulations to Ms. Mann. And the last recognition for staff would be to our English teacher, Cassie Mount, who scored 100% proficiency, or for Paul's sake, 99.99999. I'm not allowed to say it's 100, believe it or not. proficient in the English 2 EOCs the last time we gave it, which was the fall of 2019. So congratulations to Ms. Mount and her students for that achievement. For student recognitions, junior Sarah Lynn Phillips is the Manteo High School recipient of the Prudential Spirit of the Community Award. The Prudential Spirit of the Community Award program is the United States' largest youth recognition program based exclusively on volunteer community service. Created in 1995, the program honors middle-level and high school students for outstanding service to others at the local, state, and national level. A longtime resident of the Outer Banks, Sarah Lynn has seen the impact of hurricanes here year after year, and in 2019, she felt a calling to help her community and those in the surrounding area. Sarah Lynn began soliciting local artists and then planned a silent auction with their art, and which she received. She held her first silent auction at the 2019 Outer Banks Seafood Festival and raised over $1,000. The money she raised was donated to a church in Ocracoke. Sarah Lynn plans for her event, quote, the Eye of the Hurricane, unquote, to become an annual one so that she continue helping nearby areas as they are impacted by natural events. Junior Sarah Lynn Phillips. We have two juniors who have been nominated by the school district to go to the North Carolina Governor's School. We feel pretty confident they'll make it, and that's Grayson Lewis and Brandon Hurd. So congratulations to Grayson and Brandon. And I'm going to let Ms. Pritchard read the last one since she was kind of involved with the 2020.
The last one that we have is our 2020 graduates, Sophia Spinella and Laura Kate Wright, who served as editors of last year's yearbook, and they received the North Carolina Scholastic Media Association's All Southern Award for the 2020 yearbook.
And that concludes our recognitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have instructional highlights. Dr. Parker?
Okay, well, Ms. Pritchard's going to set up our computer, and our department chair, Mr. Noto, will speak to the presentation, which is a timely one. We got lucky enough to receive a grant from Mr. Parker's efforts to be able to do labs virtually. So it was a timely thing that happened in the fall, and Mr. Noto will explain it with Ms. Pritchard's help.
Good evening. I'm Emily Donato, and I'm a science teacher and the science instructional leader here at Manteo High School. We've all probably said the words unprecedented times over and over this school year as we are planning and problem solving how best to serve our students at Manteo High School and in Dare County schools. The teachers at Manteo High School have risen to the challenge and have worked with one another, administrators, parents, and students to give the highest quality of instruction to our students in these unprecedented times. I'm here this evening to discuss one tool that the science department has used to help reach our students and give them new and differing opportunities to learn. One of the challenges of remote learning for the science department is not being able to complete experiments and hands-on lessons, which is a cornerstone of what we do in our department. Through a grant coordinated by Dr. Keith Parker, Dare County Schools 6th through 12th grade teachers were given the opportunity to use ExploreLearning.com's online science simulations called Gizmos. Gizmos are interactive simulations where students can explore science concepts across the curriculum, from earth science to chemistry to physics and biology. These simulations offer a variety of levels that we can incorporate into our curriculum, from introductory courses through advanced placement. This evening, a few of Elizabeth Gray's AP Biology students are going to highlight two different biology gizmos. In the first clip, Emma is going to show the cell structure gizmo, where students can get an in-depth look at the cellular structure of animal and plant cells. This gizmo can be utilized in many ways, such as an independent study of the cell, review material for an assessment, or a whole class discussion.
right? Inside of it, we had, doesn't tell us, water, right? But before I worry about the water in here, I'm going to get some information. So we have radius and height. Now, the radius of this funnel, well, it says the base diameter is 4 centimeters. It means the radius is 2. And the height of this funnel is 5. All right. Inside of this, we have our water. So inside of this funnel, we have our water, kind of resemble the same shape. And the water is leaking out. Water will also have a radius and height. And since it's inside of the cone, it's going to have the same characteristics in terms of we're going to have a right angle between the radius and the height and all that stuff. So let's label the information that they give us. Water is draining at a constant rate, 2 centimeters cubed per second. How can I write that using calculus notation?
dV over dt equals -2 centimeters cubed per second.
Yeah, why is it negative?
Meters a second. Because the water, there's less water in the cup now.
Correct. So this is modeling the volume of the water in the cup. And so since this rate, we're actually decreasing, that means that we have to have the negative sign. If I was filling the cup, my volume would be positive. All right, so we have that. All right, so our end game here is to find how fast is the water level falling when the water is 2.5 centimeters high. So we're trying to find the rate of change of the height, dH over dt, when h is equal to 2.5. All right. How do I find the volume of a cone? Start there.
Is it h divided by 3 times pi r squared?
Yes. So it's you think pi r squared h is how you do a cylinder, but anything that comes to a point like a pyramid, it's 1/3 of that. So you can say h over 3, or I'm going to go 1/3 pi r squared h.
Hi, my name is Emma Daniels. I'm a senior at Manteo High School, and I'm also a student in Ms. Gray's AP Bio class. And today I'm going to be walking you through some of what we do in class, which is a website that we're just starting to get familiar with, which is explorelearning.com. And we do these interactive lessons called Gizmos. So today I'm going to be showing you one about cell structure, which is a unit that we're just starting in our class. So as you can see, there's some buttons you can press. So if you click this, that prompts this animal cell to pop up on the screen. And if you click this drop-down menu, you can scroll through and pick organelle to focus on. So I'm going to just look at the mitochondria. So you can look closer and zoom in. You can pan the screen around. It's a very easy website to figure out. There was no instructions on this one, but it was simple enough that we were able to figure it out. And you can pan through and pick different little organelles to focus on. So I'm going to take a closer look at centrioles, and it'll give you some definitions. You can also switch and look at a plant cell. So they just put a piece on the slide, and you can zoom into this as well and zoom out just like in the last one. Same kind of deal. You can go through, pick a organelle to focus on, and see what they look like. Now if you go to tools, you can do all these things. You can take screenshots to remember for study guides. You can click on the arrows. So you can do that to help yourself. This will show you how to understand the website better. You can turn the sound off if you're not into that. And that's pretty much the gist of it. I hope you enjoyed watching.
Hi, this is Carrie. I will be covering over the handbook for Gizmos and photosynthesis. So the handbook is on the right corner. I click that and it would take me to Welcome to the Photosynthesis Handbook. So when I click next, the next thing you would see is the details about the protons. So the sun releases high energy particles of light called protons that travel to the earth. Protons are a type of light energy. So I can go over this again on the glossary, which will tell me the definition, and I can click on this at any time. So the next part I'll be talking about is the blue button, which is to learn more about the photosynthesis, and it shows what's happening. I will be going over the basics of the photosynthesis, and I will continue my way down. Here I label the inputs and the outputs after reviewing everything of the basics, and so if I ever get something wrong, I could always try again. So here I am going over again the basics, making my way down, and so here is the diagram, the difference between photosynthesis and the cellular respiration for both inputs and outputs.
So I went through and I collected my control data. It showed me the normal water and the GBR water. And I analyzed my data and made my predictions. So then I went down to this hypothesis, and it showed me, I clicked on high sea temperature and paraquat and diuron, and explained to me what they meant. And I used my knowledge from what I learned in the handbook and prior knowledge to decide that I think the diuron is what's causing the coral reefs to die. And then I had to write a hypothesis, and I wrote that right there. So then I'm going to go test the temperature. So now it's asking me to predict what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to, you can review these terms by clicking on them, so you can go back to the glossary. And there's my control data that I mentioned. So now it's going to ask me what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to increase, and decrease. I'm going to run the experiment. And my predictions were correct. And explains to me why. And that was for the temperature, which was one of my 3 choices for what I think was wrong. And now I can go and revise my hypothesis, but I don't want to because I still think it's right. But say that I thought that it was the temperature, that experiment just showed me that it wasn't. So I could change it if I got it wrong. But I'm going to leave it. Now I'm going to move on to my paraquat. Okay. So it's just like before with the temperature. And I'm going to put my predictions. I think it's going to increase, decrease, and decrease. I'm going to run the experiment. And then again, it shows me what happened. That's what the yellow line is. That's what happened during the experiment. And it's going to show me what the correct answers are. And if I got them wrong, then I would be able to see why it was wrong because it explains it to you. So I'll go through and read that. And now it's going to let me revise my original hypothesis again. So if I picked that one, I now know that it's incorrect. So I could change it if I wanted to. But I'm going to leave it. And now I'm going to move on and test my final one, which is the one that I chose. So I'll see if it's right, which I think it should be because it's the only one left. But still.
I would like to thank Mr. Grady Edwards for creating tonight's video, Mrs. Elizabeth Gray for guiding her students' work on tonight's presentation, and AP Biology students Emma Daniels, Carrie Chavaria, and Jordan Holcomb for their explanation of gizmos. Are there any questions?
No, but it's amazing what everybody, with all this pressure, like you said, unprecedented times, and the way the teachers have adapted and the students are following suit. It's really nice when you can't be face-to-face that at least they can see that whole process.
Absolutely, it's very helpful. Thank you so much.
And next, while we're at Manteo High School, we had a meeting earlier in the week with Mr. Luciano, and he was walking us through a mid-year meeting. We meet with our administrators often, and he was walking us through some of the different ways that he and Ms. Pritchard are working with the staff in tracking lesson plans online, remote learning, ensuring that the objectives are being met. They're tracking the amount of time that's taken to communicate with parents to make sure that we're following through with that. And John's a master of data collection, and he's got an impressive array of, to see from administrator's viewpoint what it looks like remote learning as you're working with teachers. And they've put together a fantastic array of tracking measures, and I thought while we're here tonight, I asked John and Sarah to present and show off a little bit.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you. So when we're in this remote learning and teleworking, we need a way during the school day and beyond to make sure that what we tell the public, what we tell Dr. Farley, what we tell all of you board members, and what we tell students is actually happening, and also be able to offer help to our students. So we start, kind of like we start back on a Friday. So the first, and by the way, this is, might even hope there's no crazy messages like for my wife up there, okay? When I did this on Tuesday, there was a message from my wife, and it was like, okay. So this is literally my computer. So I can take this with me to meetings if I wanted to. I can do this from home or obviously from my office. So this is already there, it's already set. It's under what we call remote learning. So as we go through all these different steps, you'll see that I could click on, as my lovely assistant will do in a minute, and you'll see how that works. So we start on Friday afternoon. All staff by Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, have been instructed, as per it is district policy, to have lesson plans done for the following week. Those lesson plans will go to parents and students. So at 3 o'clock, we sit in our office and we start. And you'll click on the first one. There's every teacher's and their lesson plans. So you want to click on some, Ms. Pritchett, and talk about them? So this is done on Friday afternoon. Now, in the beginning, I have to tell you, this was not quite what it is, but you just saw. So we spent a lot of time the first couple of weeks making comments on these, helping to instruct our staff on what is an objective versus what is an activity. In the beginning, a lot of teachers put activities in, like a student will factor a polynomial. Well, that's an activity, not an objective. So we spent the first couple of weeks talking about what's the difference between what is the objective of this class, what are the activities of the class. And believe it or not, very quickly we got to the point where now we can go through these pretty quick. I think the first Friday was probably 3 hours, maybe even less, but close to 3 hours. Now we can do this in an hour. And as you can see, it's everybody. Sometimes, very rare, when we click on, they're not there, and they immediately do get an email from, and I usually send them. I didn't want to put the pressure on Ms. Pritchett. And it just says, look, if you need help, fine. Here's the people you could help. Bailey Allison is one of the people. She's our instructional facilitator. We'll ask her to help. We'll help. Ms. Pritchett has sat down many times with people. Just say, come see us Monday morning first thing and we'll help you. And most of the time it's just, I'm sorry, I didn't put them in. They'll be in by the weekend. And then we do spend the weekend making sure. So by Sunday, either they've made an appointment to do them on Monday morning, and that doesn't happen anymore, but it did in the beginning, or they're all in. And I would say now, it's rare that we have to send an email out to a teacher and say, you didn't do your lesson plans. So we know what every teacher's doing in the morning from 8 to 12 teaching, And we know what all of our non-certified are doing regarding working with students or whatever it is. And they know we're watching too, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So this is powerful, but this is the next one's real powerful. It's kind of funny, actually, because again, I can take this computer anywhere. So when I had it in Dr. Farley's office, I said, well, let's go look at some classes. And so if you click on Google Meets, now this, obviously, if you clicked on right now, there is no, Mr. Metziger is not teaching right now. But if this was, as it was when I talked to Dr. Farley, if this were this time, this is by periods. You can see first period, second period, third period, fourth period. I did the one with Dr. Farley, I think it was first period. I click it on, and we're in that classroom. So picture this, that we're in our offices, whatever else. We've looked at lesson plans for the week. I know what Mr. Metziger is supposed to be doing today, Tuesday, for instance, and if my recollection is correct, it had to do with volumes of spheres or something like that. So I know what he's supposed to do, and now I can go in and check that he's doing it. So if we would go to that. Now, we taped, this morning, but we taped it, so you can at least see what's going on. This is what, and he saw, Dr. Farley saw this. This is what you can do.
Inside of it, we had, doesn't tell us water, right? But before I worry about the water in here, I'm gonna get some information. So we have radius and height. Now, the radius of this funnel, well, it says the base diameter is 4 centimeters. Means the radius is 2. And the height of this funnel is 5. Inside of this, we have our water. So inside of this funnel, we have our water, kind of resemble the same shape. And the water is leaking out. Water will also have a radius and height.
Okay, we can stop it. So that would,
It's inside of the code.
so that would be Mr. Metzer. I can go on, we're not gonna do that. You get the idea. But this is exactly what we'd see if you had my computer and you clicked on that time and that period, you'd see this. This is exactly what you'd see. So I can see how many kids are involved. There's a number up on the right-hand corner if you can see it. But, okay, there's a number right up there we get, which is exactly how many people in the room. So we check that with attendance. So if there's supposed to be 22 people in the room, because you can't always see all the kids, but the number's right. If there's supposed to be 22, we look. If we see 21, 22, 19, great. If we come across a class that has like 18 or 16 or 15 poor attendance, we can then talk to the teacher, what's going on? So we can watch what's going on, we can see the students, we can see the work the teacher's doing. And again, this is instantaneously as it's going on at any time from anywhere that computer is, or Ms. Bridges' computer. So we have one, and if you recall, the lesson plan was, that's what his lesson was. So we can check lesson plans and what's going on in the classroom. And then we have one other, if you can find it. As another example. Did I mess you up by jumping ahead?
DH, there's my volume.
What kind of connects us? Right, Layla, they could definitely be connected through history or culture, or language. So it might have something to do with maybe colonization at that point, whether it's, old-time colonization or modern day, those kind of manifest destiny ideas. Is there anything else that you can think of that brings us together and makes our world a whole lot smaller?
Sarah, that's good. Okay, so again, that's what we saw this morning when we went in. That's what you would see if you had my computer. You can check out a teacher teaching, you can check out what they're doing, and again, you can relate that to the lesson plans they said they were doing. Do you want to do the one I skipped, the certified classified attendance spreadsheet?
The tracking first?
Oh, yeah, okay, let's do that, sure.
So when we went back to remote learning, we began tracking our visits to the classes. And so this just shows on any given day what class I've been to and what class he's been to, so that we know that we're visiting all of the classrooms, sharing the love, and, how often or when we might need to go back in. So this just has all of the faculty members and then our initials. So the other one that he was talking about was the certified work from home at some point during the week. And so what we've asked them to do is there's a form that they fill out, and so there's one for our certified, there's one for our certified employees, and then there's one for our classified employees. And so this is the spreadsheet with the responses that we get. And you can see that this tracks back to the beginning of the year when we started doing this. And so I think there are like over 500 responses at this point. But the thing that we really look at is the what I did today. And so it shows between 1 to 3 what they're doing. And so they get a little bit more specific as we go on throughout the year. So it has, you know, office hours, some of our coaches, so this one is a coach, obviously, because it's a virtual swim interest meeting, cross-country email. So it tells us what they're doing if they're not in the building. For those that are in the building, we walk around quite often and we go and visit and, you know, we check in on them and we see what they're doing with the students. And so this is just another accountability tool for us. And so we have one for certified, and then we also have one for classified. And so this is checked daily to make sure that it's submitted.
Because we heard a lot of comments, I'm sure you've heard some, you know, the teacher's only working half a day. Not true. Not only is it not true, we can show you it's not true, whether they're home or in this building from the hours of 1 to 3, which is now they're not teaching, they've had their lunch, they tell us what they're doing, and we check. Sometimes people think we check too much, but that's okay. I mean, I'd like to be able to look people in the eye and say, no, when you say it's not happening, yeah, it is, and I'll show you. You can come, again, you come to my office and you ask me, they'll click this on and we can see it, you know. And again, it's all at my fingertips, which is incredible ability to do technical work here that I've learned over the last year, I'm sure.
John, I got to school a little earlier today, and there's a parking lot, just based on observations, there seems to be a lot of backward.
Yeah, we're pretty good. You know, well, again, I think we stress the importance of being here. We stress the importance of, as much as possible, keeping this, you know, the way it is. We even comment on classes that are shorter than we think they should be. I mean, we understand once in a while that it's probably good to give students a break to let them do some homework, but pretty much, you know, we expect teachers to be teaching the entire time that they're in class. So we also have, I guess, is IT next? This is our IT schedule. We continue with instructional help, interventions, and so this would be, as you can see, teachers put the names of kids in there. We'll go quickly. We don't have to identify the kids, but we check it. If it's in red, that means it's going to get a phone call from me or Ms. Pritchett or someone. Why weren't you there? We've assigned it. You needed this extra help. You didn't show. You can kind of look real quickly and get the idea that it gets a little better lately because tests are coming up. So we've had a lot more success lately than we did back in the fall. Got the parent contact?
Yep.
Okay, you can do that one.
All right, so our last one is the parent contact log. And so we created this with a lot of feedback from our staff, so it's a little bit differently, or we're doing it a little bit differently than we did last year. So it has all of the students' names, it has a place for the teacher, the date, the reason, the type, and the outcome. And what we've done is we've made it so that on the 5th contact, that row is highlighted. And so if 5 teachers are calling home, or you know, if there have been 5 different phone calls home, then there's probably something going on. And so it's highlighted, and it actually sends an email to our MTSS team. And so then our MTSS team is able to kind of look into it and take over if necessary.
And that's about it, but I mean, again, I just want to stress to you that technology allowed us, we actually, you know, in one way, truthfully, because we're not dealing with students as much in terms of, you know, not doing the right thing, we do a lot more supervision now of staff and what's going on in the classroom. That's kind of fun of the job right now, because we're not, I mean, every minute is either, you know, it's one thing or the other with all of this, so it's kind of exciting. And I think that in the end, the teachers that are going to thank us all for all the lesson plans they did, because the second semester, pretty much if they're teaching a similar class, they can tweak it, but they're already done, so it'll be hopefully even quicker. But it wasn't easy, and I appreciate the support we had from central office, because there were probably in the beginning a little bit of frustration from teachers over they're asking us to do this and they're asking us to do that. Well, yes, but we're all asking kids to do a lot of things they didn't have to do either, and that's been our message from day one. The only people we're really worried about right now, mostly, are kids, and then we'll worry about the teachers, and I guess we'll worry about me and you, but we'll be all right, right?
We'll be okay.
We'll be okay.
It's encouraging to see too that I feel like once we are back into normal school, that our teachers are just going to be that much more on it to, I mean, not that they didn't do a great job before, but everybody just seems kind of tuned into each other and bouncing ideas off each other and helping each other get where we need to be. And so creating that team kind of atmosphere is good.
Okay.
And I think this is very outstanding and helps to provide not only verbal communication about, yes, we're doing it, but being able to show it, documentation to back it up. Is this something that you cornered the market on, or is this something that's kind of shared?
I don't know that answer. We just do what we do. I mean, if anybody asks, we tell them we do things, but it would have to be.
We try not to pump him up too much.
He tried not to smile, I saw that.
But John actually, for several years, has been kind of our expert in EVAS. So he actually spends a lot of time mentoring principals. And through the course of time, although we always have technology as one of our goals, he's a wizard, former math teacher, and he does a lot of mentoring of our administrators. So yes, and anytime we see good work, we want to share it out, and that's part of our work.
So are the other administrators doing similar, finding their own similar?
Several, yes, absolutely. So we hit, despite the struggles of, remote learning and going to hybrid and all the different things that we've been going through for the last 4 or 5 months. Yeah, we set very high standards, and that was a lot of the work that we did over the summer, not knowing if we would start remote learning or not. And as we built that remote learning guidebook, that was 37 of our administrators working together to say, what are the highest standards that we can put in place? And as John referenced, we not let up on a break at all. So yeah, all of our administrators are expected to pop in on a daily basis into Google Meets for monitoring, and then John's just taken it with Sarah and his staff to build a real model with all the different access points and details that you've seen tonight.
Okay, and again. Well, now that you're the chair, I expect nothing less from you either, okay?
Thank you, well done. Let's give him a hand.
Next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have public comment, Dr. Parker? Do we have public comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, before we start public comment, I'm going to read our guidelines. The Dare County Board of Education welcomes comments from our parents, students, and community. The public comment period is open for members of the public, including parents and students, to voice compliments, concerns, or complaints about performance of school personnel, implementation of board policy, the quality of the education program, or school facilities. Each person or organization is granted 3 minutes for his or her presentation. This portion of the meeting is for the board to hear matters of interest from the public. However, obscene, vulgar, or profane statements and statements reasonably perceived to be disruptive or imminently threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We do have a couple of comments tonight. Some of them are somewhat lengthy, so I'll do my best to read these for the board here. The first comment comes from Susan, and the comment is, please consider every available option to allow the junior class to take the PSAT next month, along with the ACT. These are very important tests that can have a significant impact on their future. Thank you for your attention to this. The next comment is from Charity Gray Breto. Are there any plans being made to open the elementary schools? Have you consulted with Sheila Davies or an actual medical doctor regarding opening and the excessive quarantine since the last board meeting? The next comment is from Ebony. Why is Carl Woody on the board when he has used racial slurs? As a minority with children in the school system, this is disgusting. How can you allow this? The next comment is from Shelley Honeycutt. Thank you to the DCS administrative team and the Board of Education for making tough decisions to ensure the health and safety of DCS students and staff. Our elementary schools were at 100% capacity with no required social distancing measures under Plan A, and it was very difficult, near impossible, for us as teachers to keep everyone healthy and focused on learning. While there are certainly challenges with remote learning, I appreciate the difficult decision to stay remote during this time. The next comment is from William Yetzer. Board of Education. Last Thursday, I sent the entire board and Miss Davies an email which has gone unanswered. To that email, I attached a press release from Currituck County Schools regarding a positive COVID test. I have also attached that document to this correspondence. In that document, Currituck County describes what is required of a person which has close contact with the person who tested positive for COVID. In Currituck County, the close contact only needs to monitor for COVID symptoms twice daily for 14 days. Why is Dare County requiring a 14-day quarantine when a neighboring county is not? I beg the board to follow Currituck County's leadership and adopt their more workable and common sense close contact policy. Also, why did the board vote to close the entire district when only one or perhaps two schools were having staffing issues? Finally, I'd like to thank Mr. Hess for being a lone voice advocating for students and working families. Thank you, Bill Yetzer. The next comment is from Katie. Knowing what we know about the accuracy of the PCR test, using it as a basis to use the most restrictive quarantine policies is unacceptable. Please ask Ms. Davies to provide sufficient evidence that the PCR test alone are enough to disrupt the lives of students and staff in Dare County. At the last board meeting, excuse me. Let me get a glass of water. This one's a bit lengthy. Harvey Hess, excuse me, at the last board meeting, Harvey Hess requested the same thing, and Mr. Twitty said she would just say the same thing. We, the community at large, do not support the implementation of Mandy Cohen and Roy Cooper's extremes. You were quarantining entire classrooms instead of following the guidance of 6 foot for more than 15 minutes. You can do better. This is just administrative laziness. Teachers are being asked to do the impossible. My son never went back when schools opened because I knew this was going to be an issue. Also because of the implementation of mask wearing for all children. To expect a 5-year-old to wear a mask properly for more than 7 hours is absolutely insane. It is absolutely absurd to think that their learning environment would not be hindered by having not only their faces covered, but their teachers' and friends' faces covered as well. This is not okay. While my son personally does have a mask exemption, I know for a fact the school board is trying to make kids scared of each other if they are not wearing a mask, and this is also not okay. This is evidenced by a specific music assignment that was put forth through virtual learning in the last few weeks at Kitty Hawk Elementary School. The assignment had absolutely nothing to do with music and everything to do with scare tactics, which I'm not okay with. This is just one example of many. My child is not scary. He will not make people sick and kill them because medically he does not have to wear a mask. This rhetoric has not only got to stop with the public at large, but with our school system. I have also been told of another child who has a mask exemption, and he was basically put inside of a plexiglass box. In what kind of world is that okay in the interest of inclusion, that the child should not have to go through that type of isolation and embarrassment? This has got to stop. Our children are being affected by this in a way that I do not know if they will be able to come back from. My child's first year of public school has been taken away from him and stolen, and if anybody would just look at the science, they would know that it is safe for children, according to the World Health Organization and the CDC, even to be in the building. Just look at the numbers. This virus is not spreading easily among children. Strapping something across a child's face and not letting them play with their friends does nothing. It hurts the children emotionally, and quite frankly, it is giving not only myself, but my child a complex. He is scared to go to school because he is scared of people covering their face, and this is not normal, and this is not going to go away. It started off with 2 weeks, then 2 months, and now we're 10 months down the road, and this is not going to go away. My child deserves better. All children of Dare County deserve better. We as a society deserve better. And to push another point home, giving me the option of keeping my child virtual is not really an option. The virtual learning curriculum and implementation was severely lacking when kids went back to school. My son's teacher was not fully able to teach a virtual class and her in-person class. The synchronous learning option is absolutely the most ridiculous, terrible option for young children. My son cried because he saw all of his friends in school where he wanted to be but could not be during every session. Most days he refused to even log into his sessions, and he was angry and hurt. He keeps asking me when he can go to school and when he won't have to cover his face. Watching all those kids during synchronous learning wearing a mask during the school day absolutely broke my heart. Thank you for your time and consideration. Our next comment is from Megan Elder. Based on the current facts and new information coming out of America and European countries about the quality of the PCR test in identifying contagious individuals, it would be prudent for the Dare County Board of Education to remove Sheila Davies from authority over the processes they develop for quarantine and isolation of students in light of the COVID-19 restrictions. Scientific literature supports the ineffectiveness of PCR testing as a diagnostic tool. What cycle threshold is being used in Dare County to determine excessive quarantine policies that infringe upon a variety of individuals' basic and inalienable rights? Portuguese courts have ruled that PCR tests are unreliable to support quarantining of human beings. And Ms. Elder references some articles here in her comment that we won't read here, but is referenced in the comment. Continue here where there's a series of links that are referenced here in the comment. Conversely, people often test positive for weeks or even months after they recover, but have high CT values, suggesting the PCR has identified genetic material from non-infectious viral debris. Current guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and World Health Organization, which call for patients to isolate themselves for 10 days after onset of symptoms, recognize they are not likely to be infectious after that period. But Mann and others say that recent findings also suggest that a patient who has undergone multiple tests with high CT values is likely at the tail end of their infection and need not isolate themselves. He adds that contact tracers should triage their efforts based on CT values. If 100 files land on my desk as a contact tracer, I will prioritize the highest viral loads first because they are the most infectious, Mann says. Students and staff are being unnecessarily quarantined, denied IEP services, which are legally bound, and affecting the mental and emotional well-being of all involved by employing more restrictive than necessary restrictions on human beings as basic rights and access to vital needs such as a safe educational environment. Given that Dare County was already experiencing disproportionate levels of suicide, overdose, poverty, and childhood food insecurity prior to COVID-19, all interventions should be carefully weighed against the detrimental and life-altering effects of the procedures assigned by Sheila Davies and carried out by the Board of Education and Dare County School Administration. When you are doing more harm than good, you need to set aside ego and fear and do what is right. This is your job today. And Ms. Elder lists some other articles here in the comment. It is clear that Roy Cooper and Mandy Cohen do not have our best interests at heart. That isn't political, it's a fact, and thinking people can validate that easily if they try. Answer the question, where did Mandy Cohen come from? I promise you, many of the children are not okay. Just tonight, while tutoring an 11-year-old who has never even met his teacher or classmates face-to-face, my student broke down just talking about how he used to run cross-country. The children are not okay. Fix it. Stop taking orders from people who don't demonstrate transparency, accountability, or proficiency. Harvey Hess was right. You hung him out to dry and sold the children down the river, which you refused to challenge or question the health department. They do not have ultimate authority. Our sheriff has a duty, and so do all other public servants. We are all waiting for you to do the right thing. Put the children back in school and stop pretending there is a pandemic. What is the death rate? Let me help. And then there's some additional articles listed here. However, this increase is not seen from the CDC data. In fact, the percentages of deaths among all groups remain relatively the same. Just taking orders did not work in the Nuremberg trials. This is state-sponsored child abuse. Anyone who doesn't voice their expressed disapproval of our health director is complicit. There is a better way. And our next comment comes from Catherine Fagan. I object to someone who has expressed racist opinions being installed on the Board of Education. Our children should not have this behavior accepted. The next comment is from Robin Guatkin. Please open the schools again, even if 2 days face-to-face and 3 virtually. The next comment is from Betty Selby. In a time of racial unrest, we need to carefully select leaders in our communities that have public interest for all people. If it is any doubt that malice intent in our leaders, then our community should take immediate and appropriate actions to protect every citizen in our community, regardless of race. Our children and parents should not have to be watchful of any Board of Education member that displays racism or retaliation as a motive for running for the board. The Dare County Republican Party should speak up and protect our children. The next comment is from Rashada Gregory. Number 1, as an African American mother, how am I supposed to be okay with a known racist overseeing my child's education? Why haven't you made any public apology if you want any type of reconciliation with the minority community? Why would you think you're a good representation of all children's best interest after making racist comments to someone? And how can we trust you with our children's educational needs? Wouldn't that be a conflict of interest? We teach our children to love all races. How can we believe our children will have the very best quality education under the watch of someone who makes racial slurs to minorities? It's well known that people who are racist oppress minorities, and how can you be trusted to do what's right by minority children? If we go by the fact you were reprimanded for calling your coworker a racial slur and would say something with that past is a good candidate for overseeing minority children's education, wouldn't that put a racist person at an advantage to oppress minority children? And how can generations and how many generations could a racist person who works in that position being sworn in and be destroyed for having someone being a racist in that position? The next comment is from Whitney. I'm a concerned citizen with children and family members in the school system. Systematic racism has been going on in our country for centuries. It has impacted generations of my family members. I teach my children tolerance and the difference between right and wrong. I support our school systems and our teachers and our leaders. What I can't support is Carl Woody on the Dare County Board of Education. Mr. Woody has made inappropriate racist comments that have hurt the black community. We will not stand for this, and he needs to step down and resign from the board. My children deserve better, your children deserve better, and our schools deserve better. The next comment is from Wanda. I want to know, is it true that Carl Woody lost federal E-rate grant money when he worked for the school system? This is deeply troubling. The fact that our schools had to return hundreds of thousands of dollars because he just left the money sitting on the table is disgusting. There are hardworking teachers in Dare County that could have received a raise if he had not lost this much money. Mr. Woody said during his campaign that he wanted more budget transparency, and now we learn that the school system lost $500,000 because of him. We needed more budget transparency when he worked for the schools. It doesn't look like he should have anything to do with taxpayer money if he remains on the Board of Education. Please don't give him access to the checkbook. The money might go missing or simply be flushed down the toilet. The next comment is from Janetta. It is really disheartening that when we think as a society we have come a long way from where we started, only to have openly racist people making decisions on behalf of our children, especially children of color. People just accept it like it's not a problem. As a parent to 4 children currently enrolled in Dare County schools, I say shame on anyone who accepts this and thinks it's okay behavior. Has a public apology been issued? Has the issue been addressed? Has the gentleman being sworn in today acknowledged what he said was wrong and presented ways he will make it right going forward? Because if he has, I haven't heard anything. We are better than this. We should expect more and hold our officials to an extremely high standard where our children are concerned. Not sure how we got here, voting along party lines for school board members, but I feel this will have a grave mistake and set forth a precedent of allowing more tone-deaf and underqualified people into positions of power and decision-making for our children. As a parent of children of color, I am not okay with this. Madam Chairman, that concludes our public comments tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Next on the agenda, we have approval of the consent agenda, which includes the personnel consent agenda, minutes of the November 10th special meeting, the November 10th regular meeting, the November 13th special meeting. We also have a budget amendment and a approval of acceptance of a donation from Duke Energy and the Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Twitty and a second from Ms. Lawler. We'll do a roll call. Mary Ellen Balance, yes. Susan Bothwell?
Yes.
Frank Hester?
Yes.
Margaret Lawler?
Yes.
Joe Tauber?
Yes.
David Twitty?
Yes.
Carl Whitty?
Yes.
Motion to approve unanimously. Next up, we have reports or items for information. Dr. Farley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick notes. So I think it's vital for us, short and long term, to recognize the significant achievement gap that is going on, and really for every student across the country, but more importantly for us in Dare County. And as we plan, as we start to move towards budget season, and hopefully there's a vaccine, and hopefully at some point we're back with face-to-face instruction, I think it's important for us to start planning ahead in a proactive manner so that we are trying to supplement to the best of our ability so that kids can catch up. So our team has been having some conversation with our administrators and a lot of dialogue about different kinds of supplemental programs that we could put in place, both in the short term and in the long term. And ideas, and some of these aren't new, many aren't. But one of the keys for us is if we come up with a comprehensive plan for the next 18 to 24 months, we're going to have to find a way to fund some of these concepts. So we would love to be able to offer a after-school tutoring program led by our teachers, paying our teachers. We are very interested in the concept of having some Saturday academies, and it gets a little tricky with the calendar law about when we could do that, but we certainly could build that in, where kids are coming in maybe for 3 or 4 hours on a particular day. Some of this could be mandated, some of it not. We're interested in a comprehensive summer school. So in North Carolina for several years, it's probably been maybe 10 years, I believe, since the state has actually funded summer school. So school districts that do have their own summer programs often are coming up with that locally or creating funding pots through the different state, local, federal allotments that they've got in order to provide a summer school program. We've had various degrees of summer school opportunities, most of them within a couple of weeks after the school year ends at the high school level, credit recovery. We certainly have had to implement the Read to Achieve summer camps over the last couple of years. And I think that we need to take a strong look at what we could possibly provide, and maybe, and it gets tricky, but maybe the concept of some kind of an academy from June 15th to the 4th of July, something from July 15th to August 15th. We've talked a lot about if we did have a summer school program, we'd love to have an instructional component, maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then social, recreational settings and opportunities for kids and experiences. And then the other thing which gets a little, and we've gone down this road, excuse me, a little bit with our elementary schools, but we've extended the school day in all of our elementary schools in the last 4 years. And I think there's something to be said about trying to gain back more instructional time. And so one of the things I would offer is for us to study the concept of maybe increasing the instructional day, not only short-term if we come back to face-to-face instruction, but more importantly so that people are prepared and we can work out the logistics to extend the school day next year maybe upwards of 20 minutes. And when you do that over the course of time and use that time wisely, that can have an impact. The other concept, which probably would maybe get the most pushback, would be the idea of increasing the school calendar. And I wouldn't recommend that we go crazy and have 20 or 25 days. We can't do that by the calendar law. But what we could do, if there was, and I'm talking about, these are ideas. So I think it's important for our community to know that we are proactive planners. We're looking ahead both through the spring and then over the next couple of years under all these concepts, leaving no stone unturned. And if we were to extend the school year and the school calendar, it would take a local bill. So we would have to get local support from our legislators and have them go to the General Assembly. There have been a couple of districts that have toyed with this previously. We're studying those concepts right now. I do realize we're in a tourism community. We have a lot of kids that work during the summer. We have a slew of staff members who work 2 jobs and sometimes make more money during the summer than they do during the school year. So under that concept, I think it would be reasonable maybe to have 5 additional days at the start of the school year and maybe 5 on the back end. And if you did that and did the 20 minutes a day, that's a tremendous amount of instructional time that we're gaining back. So right now we're in idea mode. And we've brought in a team of our top 12 to 15 administrators and just kind of a brain dump and thinking about possibilities and sketching these ideas out. And then after Christmas, what I'd like to do is engage in maybe create some kind of a task force to go deeper into looking at the details. And if we do go the route, particularly with the summer school concept or increasing the school calendar, that's going to be a tremendous amount of funding. And we'd have to figure out a way to pay for it. And so this is prime time for us right now, because when we get into January, we start to do all our budget building, and we ask requests from the school level, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the January business meeting. But this is prime time for planning. And as you know, the 5-on-5 committee, 5 representatives from the Board of Education, 5 representatives of the county commissioners meet. We've met 2, 3, 4 times, depending upon the year. I would like to get in a position where our task force can report out to the board, and then we start to take some steps, maybe have a 5-on-5 meeting, once we've agreed on some of these concepts and ideas to flesh some of this out. If we get into summer school or an extended school year, the only way that I think that we will be able to get staff support across the board is to pay them accordingly. And that's going to be a heavy lift. But I think that it's worth it for us to consider every possibility so that we can catch our kids up. And we can have the dare difference or whatever we want to call it. We have high expectations. We're a high-performance school system, and I think our community is expecting us to be proactive in looking ahead short and long term, because we've got a lot of work to do. And hopefully we can get in a position where we get some normalcy back and the vaccine comes through and school can get back to where it used to be. But the reality is we can't just be in a position, whenever that may be, to think that miracles are going to happen. And we've got kids who need more, and we're going to have to supplement. So just wanted to kind of throw that out tonight and let our community that we are thinking, we're planning, we're analyzing, and, excuse me, and we'll put together a comprehensive plan and eventually start kind of mapping this out. So thoughts, comments, questions?
John, I think getting to this ideas thing is great, getting ahead of it. Organizing a task force to come up with the specific ideas that you want to implement to get those kids up to speed. I would also say try to figure out a cost per program that you're suggesting so that we can go to our legislators or our commissioners to kind of help assist in getting that funding for it. But I really think that it's good to get out in front of these ideas and brainstorm with your central office principals and so on and so forth to see how we can implement some of the things that you all come up with.
Sure, thanks.
Dr.
Right.
Farley, Frank Kester, do you have, it's probably too early now, but some sort of concept of how many students this would affect?
So that gets tricky because, you know, a lot of times when you try to provide extra supplementary opportunities for kids or remediation or, you know, we've got different ways during the actual school day where we try to remediate and provide kids with extra instructional opportunities, particularly in small groups. Where it gets tricky is, so, you know, we know, our schools know their data and they know where their children are performing and where they're hitting standards and where they're not. And so you ask any principal, you ask any teacher, and they know where their kids are, where they need extra assistance. Now, because of being in a school and out of school and kind of this roller coaster ride we've been through, even though we're doing a lot of assessments currently, we're gonna have to get back into the grind of school, so to speak, and to continue to perform a battery of assessments, okay? Where it gets tricky is what can you mandate and what you can't, okay? And so even though a lot of times when you try to provide supplementary programs, you go towards trying to pull in your most at-risk kids. I'm of the belief, because we've talked about this, you know, we've got students who are gonna go to Duke who are high performers and they still have a learning gap because of COVID, okay? So everyone's had some level of impact. So I think whatever we do, the approach needs to be for all kids, okay? And then we get into, but then each of these programs, these concepts I mentioned, have got different dynamics. Not everyone can stay after school. Not everyone wants to come to school on a Saturday, including a lot of staff and administrators, you know, and that does get tricky with the school calendar because you can't go 6 days in a row. The extending the school day is how we do impact everyone. So that concept has a lot of merit to it. Now, what gets tricky is you get into how does that impact transportation? Do we start picking kids up too early? You know, one way to easily implement, which we've done at our elementary schools, is maybe 10 minutes on one side and 5 or 10 minutes on the other. It also gets tricky in the afternoon because we got kids that go to other jobs, we've got athletics and so on. To me, that one is a lot easier to implement than the concept of extending the school calendar. If you do extend the school calendar, that also impacts everyone. Summer school gets into optional. So there's no way we could mandate summer school. We could, with legislative help, as I mentioned, could mandate extending the calendar. And I'm not trying to, so a lot of people, and we've got folks listening, and this will certainly hit the newspapers. I'm not trying to send shockwaves that we're gonna extend the school calendar magically, because we're not there. But my message is we need to think about every opportunity that we can provide kids to catch up. So, depending upon the program, there's different levels of how we approach our targeted audience. Sure. Okay, and just as a follow-up to that, did meet with so for the public, we have a meeting the week before the board meeting. We call the packet committee, and 3 Board of Education members come in and we go through the agenda, and we had a conversation last week about recommending a special called meeting. And as you know, the board decided to stay in remote instruction till the end of the first semester, which is January 15th. That is a Friday. with the holiday, with the weekend, and then the Martin Luther King holiday and the optional workday, the actual first day of second semester is January 20th. So my recommendation or my ask would be that the board come back the first week of January, maybe January, Thursday the 7th or Friday the 8th, to reconvene in a special call meeting to go through, work through the process of what's next and all of the different dynamics that is we've had, 3 special call meetings over the last 4 or 5 months. So my ask would be for the board to consider a special call meeting January 7th, 8th, depending upon availability. And when we've had these special call meetings, and it's very likely we'll still be under the cap as far as audience participation, and will be live audio. We have tried to go a little later in the day because we've had 1,200 to 1,500 community members who listen in and want to be able to hear the meetings. So if we could do a 4 or 5 o'clock, probably preferred, as our community and staff members would prefer that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to do this, jump on it right after the holidays. I would suggest maybe we move the packet meeting, which is normally on the first Wednesday, to that Monday,
Absolutely.
same time.
Yep. Great idea.
And if everybody's okay with Thursday, the 7th, whatever decision is made, that gives Friday, Saturday, Sunday for people to.
And actually 12 days, because if you met on the 7th or the 8th, we actually don't start second semester till the 20th.
Right.
And part of the ask is if there is a decision to go back in some delivery of traditional, whether it's a hybrid model or face-to-face, we've got a lot of work to do with staffing and scheduling, particularly in the virtual school, between that decision and the 20th. So
Right.
that gives us
Gives us
enough
your extra
time.
day.
Mm-hmm.
So is everybody okay with the 7th at 5?
Yep.
Thursday the 7th?
You might have to come in for anything like 4 o'clock, maybe, for
Sure.
a session of some sort.
You won't need closed session.
As of this point, no, but
Is there still talk about Dr. Davies coming to this meeting also, or?
if the board requests Dr. Davies, I'm sure she would attend. A couple thoughts there would be, between now and that meeting, board members could request of the chair, members of the packet committee, who they would like to attend or what they would like to see. Otherwise, we certainly in the packet meeting will flesh out the details of the meeting. But certainly, Dr. Davies, she and I spoke after the last special called meeting, and she's certainly willing to come in if asked.
Okay, so we'll do Thursday the 7th at 5 o'clock as it stands now.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, is that all for reports?
Yes, thank you.
And we have no unfinished business. So next up is new business with Candy Tilley, presentation of the 2019-2020 Audit Report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and Dr. Farley. As you're aware, we are required to be audited every year. And tonight we have Paul Carson, an audit manager with Anderson, Smith & White, our new auditors that you guys voted on last spring. And he'll be here to present a summary of our 2019-2020 audit. I do want to let you guys know, when they submitted the audit to us to get to you guys, we had about 2 or 3 weeks out from this meeting, and they said that the local government commission would need to approve it before we released it to the public or the media. So you guys have a copy as board members, and Dr. Farley and I, of course, as administrators have that. But we will not be releasing any hard copies to media or putting it on our website until we get that final approval from the LGC, and I'm expecting it any day now.
Us to collect what we have?
No,
Okay.
you may keep that in your role as board members.
Okay. And I want to thank you for your patience.
No problem. So, good evening, board members, Dr. Farley, Candy. Glad to be here. We have audited the financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Dare County Board of Education for the year ended June 30th, 2020, and have issued our report dated November 19th, 2020. We're going to go over a summary of the key areas of the audit that we discussed in detail with the committee members at the meeting last week on December 2nd, 2020. Pages 1 and 2 are our audit opinion letter. They're the first of 4 opinion letters that we issued. And that is a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. Page 12 is the detail of the general fund. The ending fund balance as of June 30, 2020 was $1,978,151, an increase of approximately $890,000 over the prior year. Unassigned fund balance is $1,390,529. This is the amount that is available for appropriation by the board, and that's in that first column on that page. Unassigned fund balance is at a reasonable level, but it would be better if it was a little bit higher, maybe in the $2 million range, given the level of expenditures in the general fund. As far as the other funds go, state public school fund and federal grants funds do not carry fund balance due to the fact that all funds that are required to be utilized in the year in which those funds are received. And then virtually all of the fund balance in the other current expense, capital outlay, and individual schools funds is restricted by granting agencies or state law for specific purposes within these funds. Is there any questions on that before we move forward?
So just a couple details. One is we have an understanding with our funding formula. You made the reference to go into $2 million. Right. That we're in the $1 million range locally, so that's part of the agreement we have with the county. And then secondly, the significant jump up in the fund balance from last year past is due to about $760,000 we saved with all the cuts we made at central office.
All right. And then go to page 58, which is the school food service fund. And, the program, the school food service program, reported a loss for the year of $161,025 compared to a loss of approximately $50,000 in the previous year. The biggest factor contributing to the decrease in profits was a $218,000 decline in food sales due to early school closure due to COVID-19. This decline was partially offset by a decrease in food cost and an increase of $74,000 in transfers from the state public school fund, which was largely from special COVID-19 that was received last year. The child nutrition program reported cash balances at the end of the year of only $59,000. The program reported a liability to the general fund of $335,000 at June 30th, 2020 for funds loaned to the child nutrition program to provide cash to pay operating costs. The loan increased $235,000 during the year. The program currently does not have enough cash to pay the $335,000 owed to the general fund. From talking with management, the program has not been profitable in recent years and is not expected to be profitable in the near future. The board should discuss if it makes sense to continue carrying this amount as a liability if it is not anticipated that the school food service fund will be able to repay it. Are there any questions on? Okay.
And this, for the board and for the community, the two programs where we historically lose money are ASAP and the child nutrition program. And there's a myriad of school districts across the state that lose money on child nutrition program annually, unless they actually have a significantly high free and reduced rate and or meet certain poverty levels.
Okay. All right, then we'll go over to page 59, which will be the child care fund. And the program reported a loss for the year of $41,831 compared to a loss of approximately $35,000 in the previous year. And the biggest factor, again, contributing to the decrease in profits was a $104,000 decline in child care fees collected due to the early school closures because of COVID-19. This decline was partially offset by a $30,000 decrease in salaries and benefits expense and a $54,000 transfer from state public school fund, which was again due to special funding that passed through the state public school fund for COVID-19. The child care program reported cash balances at year end of $0. The program reported a liability to the general fund of $58,000 at June 30th, 2020 for funds loaned to the child care program to provide cash to pay operating costs. The program currently does not have enough cash to pay the $58,000, much like the school food service fund. And again, you know, this program hasn't been profitable in recent years and is not expected to be profitable in the near future. And again, the board should discuss if it makes sense to continue carrying this amount as a liability if it's not anticipated that the child care fund will be able to repay it, which, okay. So your amendment will take care of that, okay? Basically, essentially you're just gonna write the liability off, correct? Yeah. So.
But then we're gonna move it so that it's not, even though it's not going away, right? You just figure out another.
Well, the only way it goes away is if you increase the rates to parents, which is the last thing we want to do,
Right.
particularly
Don't
during a
wanna do that.
pandemic. So, you know, I think it's, pardon? Yeah, I mean, it's a service to the community. There's high need. We typically serve 150, 160 kids a day in the program traditionally. And the last thing that we want to do is start to raise, you know, the prices. And part of the, you know, part of the trick is also we want to have a fully functioning program with lots of supervision. So if you start to cut supervision, then program quality goes down. So it's tricky.
Yep. All right. And then starting on page 60 is starts our 3 opinion letters that there are other opinion letters I mentioned earlier that we issue. The first one on page 60 is the internal control letter. Again, that is a clean, unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which again is the highest level of assurance. And we actually had a clean, unmodified opinion on federal and state awards as well, with no issues reported there. Pertaining to the internal control letter, there were no non-compliance material to the financial statements reported. However, there were 2 deficiencies in internal controls that were reported in findings 20.01 and 20.02, which are detailed on pages 67 through 69, and we'll go into that here and we'll go ahead and go over those. For finding 20.01, that's on page 67. The district underwent a fixed asset system conversion during the year. As part of the conversion process, it was determined that accumulated depreciation was not accurately reported for various assets. A prior period adjustment was recorded in the current year to correct this issue. The adjustment had the effect of decreasing governmental activities' net investment in capital assets as previously reported at June 30th, 2019 by $2,154,150. This adjustment has no impact on the budgeting process or cash balances of the board. It only affects the reported amount in the accumulated depreciation in the financial statements. Depreciation expense is not budgeted because it doesn't involve the actual expenditure of cash. The board budgets for actual purchases of capital assets such as buildings and improvements, furniture, equipment, and vehicles. No issues were noted in our audit with the budgeting aspect of capital asset purchases. We have made the recommendation that management implement procedures to verify the accuracy of depreciation expense and related accumulated depreciation calculated by the fixed asset system each year, with emphasis on given to ensuring that any new assets added are set up in the depreciation properly. Because I believe these assets in particular were assets that were added, I think, some 12 to 20 years ago. So again, if it hadn't have been for the system conversion, probably wouldn't even have noticed that there was an issue. So, any questions on that? And then going over to page 68, finding 20.02. When calculating the accrual for compensated absences each year, management should first roll over leave balances in excess of 30 days to sick leave. And this is necessary because an employee can only receive a payout for a maximum of 30 days of annual leave. The liability for compensated absences reported in the board's June 30, 2019 financial statements was calculated on accrued leave balances before performing this rollover. This resulted in the liability for compensated absences reported in governmental activities at June 30 of 2019 to be overstated by $784,785. A prior period adjustment was recorded in the current year to correct this issue. This finding is very similar to finding 20.01 in that the item did not cost the district any money and really has no impact whatsoever on the budgeting process or any decision-making process that the board goes through each year. It only affects the reported amount of the compensated absences payable reported in the financial statements. The board is not required to budget for compensated absences because it is not a current liability that is required to be paid. There's usually only a cash payout if an employee retires. Since most salaries are paid from state public school fund, these cash payouts are typically made from the state public school fund and not the general fund. We have made the recommendation that management implement procedures to ensure that the liability for compensated absences is properly calculated each year.
So the school district last year converted, as the board knows for board members who were last year, to new financial platform, and the last two items that have been brought up were discoveries of practices that have been going on for several years that we've corrected.
And then overall, we felt the audit went very smoothly. There were no difficulties encountered in dealing with management or other staff during the audit process. There were no unusual or questionable transactions or activities noted. It is important to note that we do request a lot of information and to look at a lot of transactions during our audit, and management was very transparent. They were able to provide supporting documentation for all of our transactions and account balances that we selected for testing. And the finance department appears to have done a good job of maximizing state position and dollar allotments received by the district. Are there any other questions? Well, if not, thank you for your time this evening. We look forward to working with y'all next year. And if you have any questions after the meeting, Candy has our contact information, so feel free to reach out to her anytime if you have any questions, and we'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and coming back out here. We appreciate it.
And we want to thank Candy and the members of the finance
Yes,
department.
absolutely. I know
It's
they.
an excellent audit overall, and the department is one of our most efficient and effective in the school system, so many thanks.
I spoke with Candy after the packet meeting last week, and she said that they were wonderful to work with and that they were very detailed. And so, yes, thank you for pulling all that information. I know it's a lot. Next up, we have the first reading and adoption of revised policies. Ms. Kinzel, your favorite thing? Our favorite thing? This will be a first reading.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Farley. Yes, this is one of my favorite things to do. It has to be done, though, and tonight I could have had 45 policies to present to you that were recommended through the School Boards Association when they give us periodic updates. However, you were very proactive, and on the advice of our attorneys, we decided to integrate a lot of the COVID-related changes and policies that were in the 45 policies recommended into many of our regulations. So, yay for you, yay for us. We're a little bit ahead of the game on this one. However, this evening, we have several or few policies that would need your immediate attention. Again, these policy revisions have just minor revisions and include in your policy packet, you can see the changes and the information that is directly changed in the existing policies. With your indulgence, I'll just do a real brief synopsis because we would like to recommend that the board consider adopting these on first read so that they can be put into effect January when we come back. The first policy deals with school safety. And again, there's a temporary revision within that policy that directs the schools and the superintendent to follow the Department of Health and Human Services guidelines, and directly goes back to all the provisions that are put in place during our COVID time period with all the safety precautions. So that is referenced in this particular policy. The next policy talks about testing and assessment. In this policy, there are just a few changes, mostly in wording of a specific testing that is no longer in existence. North Carolina final exams are no longer required, so that's been stricken from this particular policy. And some minor change regarding CTE tests and their name change now to state assessments as opposed to post-assessment. Again, doesn't substantially change any of what we do. And again, in all of these policies, you're going to find references changed, and the references to the legal references, cross references, those things are also going to be changed throughout the policy. Graduation requirements, policy 3460. In this policy, again, a minor correction and update to the information regarding graduation. Our policy is pretty detailed, and it provides charts for what students need in order to meet graduation requirements when they enter as a freshman in 9th grade. And then as things change, again, sometimes those charts will be added. There are new requirements now for social studies, and that's been indicated in that particular chart within the policy. And again, it goes into effect this school year for freshmen entering freshmen. The next policy, 4600, has to do with student fees. And again, minor revision that reflects changes in state law, where the fees that you approve as part of the budget adoption must be posted prominently on our website. So again, that's a minor change, but it's reflected in this policy. Policy 7335 is a minor revision for employee use of social media. And in this policy, it indicates the use of web meetings like Google Meet, and again, the specific use as it applies to our overall acceptable use policy. But again, it specifically includes that language in there since it is it's used quite frequently. So, the next policy is policy 7510. This one is probably the most substantial change from the original policy in our policy manual for tonight's first read. And it has to do with employees' leaves and absences. While the policy that is currently on the books is very brief, it simply refers the reader and the user to go to the North Carolina benefits manual that outlines all of the details in how leave can be used and under what circumstances it may be restricted. What we've done this time of year, really right before holidays, we get a lot of questions about using leave when they can or can't, and if there's any restrictions. So what we chose to do, since this came up as a suggested revision for this policy, was to take much of that information that's already in the benefits manual and insert it directly into the policy, so it's very clear that you don't have to jump to 2 or 3 different places to find the information and get the description out there for our users to be knowledgeable on how it can be used. I will note on that one, again, while there's some specifics within that policy that detail how and when leave can be used, there is language in there that gives flexibility under extenuating circumstances. And we have applied a lot of that to our staff members over the last probably 6 months in terms of how they use their leave. We've been very lenient in terms of using what leave was available for them if they needed to take leave due to COVID. And then finally, the last piece is actually a policy 7130 for licensure. and the associated regulation. In this policy, this is up before you this evening because we have some change in state board policy as it relates to the beginning teacher support program. The state board adopted a new component of the policy at the state level that requires the local beginning teacher support program administrator, that's me, to ensure that the survey that is sent out at the end of a first-year teacher's year in service, as well as the principal who supervises them, to ensure that they complete it. They want to make sure that they can collect data and help use that information to help provide like the report card for colleges and universities that are preparing our teachers. So the survey is specific to the teachers' experience and their perception on how well they were prepared to be in the classroom, and then gets their supervisor's perception from an observational standpoint. So it doesn't, that survey has been in place for the last several years, but requiring that we encourage and oversee who's completing it has now been written into that, and it's included now in our beginning teacher support plan, which is outlined in the regulation. So with that, I will entertain any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
After hearing some of the public comments today,
Mhm.
and referring to the school safety, by the way, it's Joe Tauber speaking.
Thank you.
Page 1, where it says temporary requirements to prevent COVID-19 spread, there's a sentence in here, a couple sentences here that I have some problems with in terms of clarification, where it says the superintendent or designee in conjunction with appropriate health officials, whoever they may be, shall develop protocols where necessary to implement DHHS requirements. These temporary requirements shall remain in effect until repealed by the board, until the applicable guidance from DHHS is rescinded, whichever occurs first. Especially in light of us having this meeting coming up in January, I'm a little reluctant to agree to those provisions because I think it's in the purview of the board to not delegate that to anybody but the board to make that decision on the protocol. So I know this is first reading, and maybe if we want to take it to a second reading perhaps and review that language, I'd be in favor of that, but I don't think I can agree to those that particular paragraph under those circumstances.
So this is probably for Brian to speak to. Appreciate your point, Joe. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
The current mandates that come from a combination of the Governor's Office, the State Board of Education, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, and the State Board all have school district requirements that all public schools have to follow. So I think where we're heading, and I understand your reasoning, is kind of a gray area that boils down to we have to follow these mandates, which is what we've done, but obviously there's been a public debate locally about the quarantine process.
Correct.
So I would defer to Brian as far as how to move forward regarding this particular topic, but our mandate is that we do have to follow these guidelines.
That I do understand.
Yep.
I think what people have pointed out to us is that there's a variance of that particular policy as evidenced by some of the surrounding counties who are doing something different than what we're doing. And the problem I have is, again, delegating that power to somebody that is not a member of the board, is not a member of the central office, and those are my concerns.
Brian?
Sure. This is Brian Shaw. I read the revision policy change as applying only to requirements, not to suggestions, so that these are things that would be required by DHHS. And then the concept is we have to comply with the law and somebody's got to get that going so they're not out of compliance. There certainly could be a specially called board meeting to deal with that, but I think this says, let's get the superintendent the authority to implement legal requirements so that we're in compliance. And then, as it says, the temporary requirements shall remain in effect till repealed by the board. The board always has ultimate control over that. Now, I understand your point, and again, I think if you want to remove that from the superintendent, you have to have some provision where the board will take immediate action, especially called meeting or something, to address these legal requirements. I don't think this talks about big policy changes. This talks about whatever is legally coming from Raleigh that we have to follow.
Yeah, I understand that. The term, a nebulous term is somewhat the appropriate health officials. That seems to suggest, I think, in my mind, what has, we've again delegated that authority to produce a protocol that was made locally by our health person here that seems to be in conflict with what a lot of people believe should have been the process or the protocol. And so until those things are spelled out, I have some difficulty agreeing to it. And I recognize if it's the protocol, CDC or DHHS mandating it, that's fine, because I think that's, what I'm saying is that we seem to have a variance of what that was required. That's my opinion, by the way.
And Joe, Mary Ellen Balance, where it says conjunction with appropriate health officials, who's determining who the appropriate health officials are? I mean, I know we're assuming it's DHHS.
Well, are we assuming that it's a local DHHS?
Right, like who are we determining are the appropriate health officials? Is it a couple doctors that we bring in and
No,
get their
it's
opinion?
the health department.
And so I kind of tend to agree with Joe that the wording needs to be changed a little bit to be a little more specific. And then where it says remain in effect until repealed by the board, these are temporary requirements shall remain in effect until repealed by the board. And I get what you're saying, Brian, we can come back at any time and repeal them. But I'm with Joe on this. I think there's a little
This
wording.
is Brian Shaw, and again, as I look at that, you raise a very good point, Mr. Tauber. What's the DHSS requirement and what's the local official?
Yeah, and obviously there's a variation. You can just look to counties, other counties close by that have different interpretations of DHHS policy.
But I would also, this is Farley, I would take some of that with a grain of salt because there's a lot of public opinions about this. And, you know, there's been a reference to our neighboring county. I read the press release that stated the same mandated protocols that we're following. So I think where we're going is the potential for the Board of Education to ask us to have a different protocol for who we are quarantining based upon laboratory confirmed positive cases is where the energy seems to be going, right?
I think it's the close contact definition. And
Sure.
what CDC policy says on the close contact to warrant quarantining a group of people as opposed to the individual that has contracted COVID. That's the variation that we have with other counties who claim, like we claim to be following CDC protocol.
Well, what I can, and we talked about this extensively at the last meeting. What I can say is that we are following all the state mandates. The local interpretation, as we discussed at the last meeting, and we're into tonight, of who is a close contact. That determination is made by the health department. I think again, it's getting tricky, is if you've got 17 kids in a classroom and someone has positively been identified, it is literally impossible, unless we put cameras in a classroom, when someone is spending 7 hours in a classroom environment, moving from space to space, leaving the classroom, coming back, to determine, and with the guidelines changing to 15 minutes summative as opposed to direct contact. I'm not playing defense, I'm just, for Dr. Davies, so where we're heading is the interpretation of, is the board gonna ask us, or could the board ask us to change the protocol for who is making the determination of who's quarantined and who's a close contact? Because right now, that's the health department director.
That's
And
right.
then, what are those specific measures that have to be put in place? Because right now, the state doesn't say that. The state does, we got all these guidelines, there's 160 pages of guidelines we've got to follow. When you narrow it down, and even when you see some of the local press releases, it's all the same language, but it's the practice of how they're making the determination who the close contacts are.
That's right.
You know?
That's the variance with the
So
localities.
so to your point, I think it's healthy to table this policy. And
Works for me.
I think that we need to make some determination, or the board needs to make some determination. Do we consider, and do we have the legal authority for the superintendent to overrule the director of the health department in making these determinations or not? Because who else in the school system is going to make that determination? I mean, that would fall to me. So, and I think you've got some legal recourse here, and it may be healthy to table this particular policy with the recommendations, and then going into the special called meeting, determine whether this is going to be a recommendation from the board or not.
I tend to agree, and we can convene the board packet, or the policy committee to get together to go over this. I think it needs to be a little more specified too, so I would be in agreement to pull that policy and save that for second reading and possibly discuss it at the special call.
And I would recommend, to your point, Chairman Balance, that the board policy committee consider getting together next week,
Yes.
because we're talking about the holidays.
Yes.
Understood.
And then coming right back, and then we've got a meeting. And so if there needs to be research that's done legally, we have to confer with the attorneys. We may have to call offices of the governor, Mandy Cohen, the different players, state board, DPI, for some confirmation or conferring. Then we are probably better positioned if the policy committee meets next week.
Meets next week. We'll make that happen.
And this is Brian Shaw. I agree. I'm completely comfortable with deferring it and looking at better language. I think the important thing is that there be some protocol.
Absolutely.
So that everybody knows, John knows what his authority is, what he can do, what he can't do.
Correct.
Who's going to make those decisions, rather than just be nebulous. We need some protocol. I think the policy committee could take that up in detail.
Yes. Are there any other issues with any of the other policies?
No, Frank Kester, I'd just like to say I agree with that direction, and I think that having the ability to find out some more information from Dr. Davies about how we got there will help to better set our mind in understanding what we were agreeing to.
So if we're going to take out the
safety
the school
regulation.
safety one, and so we'll need a motion to approve the remaining policies.
You need to suspend policy to read.
We got to suspend the policy.
You need to suspend your policy
Okay,
regarding.
we're going to suspend the policy regarding school safety, 1510, 4200, and 7270.
What you
Right?
do, suspend
Policy
the policy
Policy
requiring
adoption.
2 reads.
Yes.
Yeah.
Double
Yes.
read. So suspend the policy requiring approval on a second read, then we move to approve first and final of those remaining policies.
Okay. Go ahead, Margaret. What she said.
What I said.
You're on the hook.
Madam Chair, I move that we suspend policy 1510, 4200, 7270 from the first read at this meeting on December 8th. Is that what you want to hear, Brian?
Actually, all you have to do is approve the first read of
approve
all the
what's-
other policies and leave that alone, correct?
Okay, so, yes, I think that's the.
Is it all the policies that,
All the rest of the policies we're fine with.
everyone other than 1510?
Exactly.
So I would,
Remove from that list.
yeah, I would move approval of all policies other than 1510
Okay.
on first and final, waiving the policy requirement for a second read.
Okay, got that.
Say so said, so moved.
So moved. Brian said it.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Mr. Twitty, second. All in favor, we'll do a roll call again. Mary Ellen Balance, yay. Susan Bothwell?
Yay.
Frank Hester?
Yay.
Margaret Lawler?
Yay.
Joe Tauber?
Yay.
David Twitty?
Yes.
And Carl Woody?
Yay.
Yay. Done.
Thank you very much.
We need to go back and do that.
Okay, we do, Margaret caught this. We need to go back and make a motion to accept the audit report as presented.
Madam Chair, I move we receive the 2019-2020 audit report as presented.
I have a motion on the floor by Ms. Lawler,
Second.
second by Mr. Twitty. Any discussion? Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote again. Mary Ellen Balance, yes. Susan Bothwell?
Yes.
Frank Hester?
Yes.
Margaret Lawler?
Yes.
Joe Tauber?
Yes.
David Twitty?
Yes.
Carl Woody?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Fall semester testing plan, Dr. Parker. Our last item, except I have one more thing to say.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Wanted to share with the Board of Education a plan that we have developed in conjunction with the high school principals. We are nearing the conclusion of the first semester of the school year, and currently as it stands, we have a requirement from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to administer federally required accountability tests in person in our campuses, and those refer to 3 exams, and Ms. Pritchard will go to the next slide, and there we go, we're sliding down. Those are 4 exams in the high school level that are federally required accountability exams, and that is biology, English 2, Math 1, and Math 3. And so we have come up with a plan to administer those tests on our facilities pending board approval tonight on the testing plan. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we would do to do that. We also have a requirement from NCDPI to administer all career and technical education final exams for first semester in person as well. Roughly speaking, we're talking about 800 students that would have to take those exams, but that would not mean 800 students would need to come to school every day. For example, a 10th grader that might be enrolled in English 2 may only have to come to school one time to take his English 2 exam, and then the remaining exams will be taken online. We are going to move in the testing plan that we will administer every other exam other than the CT exams and the 4 exams listed here virtually. And so if a student does not have any of those exams listed on the screen, then they would take that exam remotely. And as was mentioned in one of the earlier policies, this year was the first year where the North Carolina final exams, which have been developed by NCDPI, have gone away from many high school courses. So there currently are a lot of high school courses, for example, American history previously had a state-given exam. That course no longer has that requirement. And so what we're asking our teachers to do for these courses that don't have a state exam is to develop their own internal exam this year, submit that exam to the school principal, and have the school principal approve that exam before it can be given to the students. And I'll share with you in just a minute some of the guidelines that we're going to give teachers on developing those exams. We're also, in preparation of administering these exams, going to train every certified teacher to become a test administrator for an EOC or CTE. So what we do want to do is if we bring kids back to campus to take these exams, we want to ensure testing security. So every classroom will have an exam administrator and a proctor to make sure the exam was given in compliance. I'll be glad to show you the testing calendar, which is the next slide here. And so essentially we can administer these exams in 1 week. We're going to give all of our teacher-made virtual exams on January the 7th and the 8th. So first and second period teacher-made exams. Again, these exams will be given remotely, will be given on Thursday the 7th and third and fourth period teacher-made exams will be given on the 8th. That way, those teachers have been freed up, and they could then be available to administer an EOC the following week. So we essentially will have given all of those exams on those days. Students enrolled in those courses will have to take the exam during that time. Even though they would be taking it remotely, there's a window of time we'll give them, and they'll need to take it during that time. One reason for that is the teacher may need to be available remotely to support the kid to get into the test and then answer questions if they have questions on the format of the test, etc. We are then going to administer one period per day. So starting on January the 11th, all first period EOC or CT exam students would come to campus at their high school to take that first period exam if they were in one of those courses. Tuesday would be second period, Wednesday third, and Thursday would be fourth period. We will reserve Friday for makeup exams for students that would need to use that. Sarah, if we could go down 2 slides, we'll come back to that one and go to that one there. Actually, let's go to the next one, then we'll go back up and hit the other 2. Just a couple of brief points here. One is a couple of questions and answers I'm providing for the board here. One is, are students required to take the final exam to get course credit? The answer to that is yes. In order for a student to be able to receive a high school credit, they must take the exam in order to get credit for that course. What percentage of the final exam do exams count for? The answer for that is 25%, and that is per our policy, board policy. Are students required to take a teacher-made exam at a certain time? The answer to that is yes, and we're going to provide this information to students so they can take it on the exact day and be eligible to take that exam. Will transportation be provided for EOC and CT exams? And the answer to that is yes, and we will run buses for high school students if they are eligible to come to campus on one of those days I mentioned. And the final question I've put up here is, will breakfast and lunch be served during EOC and CT exam administrations? The answer to that is also yes. So we will provide a breakfast and a lunch for any student that has to come into campus to take the exam. So we'll go back up to this final slide here, Sarah. A couple of guidelines we're going to give teachers that are making their exams this year who've not previously done this for a couple years. One is, and again, this will be measured by the principal who will review these exams the teachers submit and ultimately approve those or send them back for revision. But the teachers making the exam, it should be a cumulative exam, and it should measure accumulation of the student's mastery of the course curriculum throughout the semester. In other words, it shouldn't be 90% heavy on the last standard and 10% on all the other standards. It should have an even distribution of questions across the curriculum. Since these exams are administered virtually, we're encouraging teachers to seek out project-based exams. When I think of an exam, and probably most of the people in the room, we think of sitting down with the pencil and the teacher says start, and then you bubble in the answer and you go through 50 or 100 questions. A teacher could create an exam that way, but we also have other options. A teacher could require a student to submit a presentation or create a presentation or a movie or compile some information. An English teacher could have a student write an essay as their final exam. So there's a broad range of options teachers have other than just the multiple choice test that we all think about, and we're encouraging teachers to do that virtually because that's a greater way of measuring what the student learned and knowing that that's authentic student work. Since the child will be taking the exam at home on their own, they'll be taking these teacher-made exams virtually. But if a teacher wanted to administer a more traditional exam, they could. They could use a combination of multiple choice questions, essay, free response. You have it. And we also want these exams to be reasonable in length. And we realize students taking it home probably aren't going to be capable of taking a 100-question multiple choice exam. That's not realistic in remote learning. And so the principal will use all these variables when they approve the exam for the teacher. And we'll go up one more slide, and this will conclude the presentation. But we are also asking the board to approve in this testing plan for students to come in, certain students to come in on January the 26th, which is a Saturday. If you recall, one of the public comments was a parent asking for us to administer the pre-SAT and ACT, and we would like to be able to do that in part because of students who need those scores. A lot of students take the pre-SAT when they're eligible. I believe that is their sophomore year. Paul, is that correct? on the pre-SAT. Students are taking it sophomore year, and they'll use that score as a way to prepare for the SAT, which they can take their junior year. So we would like to be able to administer those exams. We have the staff to do that. Again, this would just be an invitation. This is not a requirement, but an invitation to students in their sophomore year to come to campuses at our 3 high schools and take that exam on the 26th. So that's an overview of the testing plan we're asking the board to approve tonight. I'd be more than glad to field any questions or comments from the board.
So the comment that we had in, that the young lady that wanted to be able to take that, this is gonna make that so she can do that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Keith, one other, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, good, just wanted to clarify that.
One other thing, talked about the principal being able to see the test before it's given to make sure, to work with the teacher to make sure it's fair, it reasonably tests the children in terms of what they've learned and so on and so forth. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, that's
The
correct.
process?
That's correct. And so the teachers are going to be able to submit these exams before we go home for Christmas break to the school principal. The principal will have the break and then up until the first week of January, and the principal will communicate with that teacher to say, your exam, I'm approving your exam, you may give the exam, but if it doesn't meet the teacher-made requirements, generally speaking, that I shared with you a minute ago, the principal will come back and say, we really want to revise this part, take this out, add this to it, or look again at this concept. The teacher will revise, and then the teacher will be able to administer. In an ideal world, we would bring teachers together across the district, and we would use our very talented teachers to create common assessments. We'd give the same assessment for American history in all 3 of our schools. We, after speaking with the high school principals, don't think that's highly appropriate in this case, in part because some students may have started out, for example, in Mr. Twitty's American history classroom. They may have went to virtual learning with Ms. Bothwell as their teacher, and now they're actually back with Mr. Twitty. And so we think because of the transition some students have had between teachers, it wouldn't be right to give them a common assessment. More likely it's probably fair to that student to let the teacher make the decision of, this is the exam that's right here and now. Our plans moving forward for these classes, since there don't seem to be state exams coming soon, is we will get teachers together in the future to create common exams. So every teacher-made exam is the same across the district. Yep, if that answered your question, Mr. Tarver. Thank you.
Dr. Parker, Frank Hester, a question. If I saw correctly, the 15th of January was a possible makeup day?
Yes, sir.
And it doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot of multiple type answer questions on the test. But the makeup test, will that be exactly like the other tests that the people are taking, or will that be slightly different?
Yes, sir. So for on that 15th, if you missed one of the EOC or CTE exams, you would then come and take that exam. But it would be the very similar format as the other students were taking that. We also are going to work with students that may have missed their teacher-made exam on that Thursday or Friday. And we're going to continuously work with those kids because our goal is to get every kid to take the exam. And so we've got some flexibility with school principals. And what we've seen, and I think Mr. Luciano spoke to it to some degree about how they're communicating with parents. If a student reaches out to us, we're going to do everything in our power to get them to take the exam. But we do think it's helpful to have that day on the calendar for the exam. But to your question, it'll be the same format as the students that took the exam previously. It won't be the same questions, will it, Paul? If they take the makeup exam, it'll be a different form. Right. So it wouldn't be the exact same question.
That was where I was trying to go.
Yep.
Thank you. I feel better now.
Yep.
We have about 800 students who would take these end of semester exams.
Any other discussion?
Sounds good.
Okay, motion. I want to make a
Madam
motion.
Chair, I move we approve the Dare County School Fall Semester Testing Plan for 2020-2021 as requested.
Madam Chair, David Twitty, second.
So we have a motion from Ms. Lawler, a second by Mr. Twitty. All in favor, or we need to do a roll call again. Mary Ellen Balance, yay. Susan Bothwell?
Yes.
Frank Hester?
Yes.
Margaret Lawler?
Yes.
Joe Tauber?
Yes.
David Twitty?
Yes.
And Carl Woody.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board.
One more quick thing. Georgia, I'm going to throw this at you. Since we're hitting the ground running and you guys are really getting to
Move quick. Would you mind sending out an email first thing in the morning to the board members with the committees that are, just what the committees are? And then if you guys would submit that, the committees you're interested in serving on, and then Margaret and I can get together fairly quickly if we've got to start doing meetings starting next week. So we can get together and make sure that I can't guarantee everybody's going to be on the committee they want, but I don't want to put you on something you absolutely hate either. So if you could get that back to me by Thursday, that would be wonderful. You don't mind doing that? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any other? Good? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion we adjourn.
David, I knew I could count on you. Motion by Mr. Twitty to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lawler.
David's falling asleep.
Meeting adjourned.
And we would like to take the board